Corporal Mack Reynolds had a talent for finding trouble. His commanding officers called it a pathological inability to follow basic instructions. Mack preferred to think of it as creative interpretation of suggested guidelines. This particular talent was why he was now trudging alone through the smoking aftermath of yesterday's battle on the border planet Nexus IV. While outside his assigned patrol route, the brass had declared this sector adequately swept for survivors, which Mack translated as "we didn't look hard enough." Reynolds to base. Still nothing but debris and disappointment out here. Remind me why I volunteered for the Space Marines again. Mack's voice echoed in his helmet comm. Because prison was your only alternative after that bar fight on Europa, the artificial intelligence in his suit replied. Mack had named the AI Donna, after his least favorite aunt who never missed a chance to remind him of his poor life choices. That was rhetorical, Donna. I'm programmed to answer all queries, rhetorical or otherwise. It's not my fault your questions are as poorly planned as your career choices. Mack stepped over a piece of twisted metal, remnants of what had once been a Draxx scout ship. The Draxx 8-foot-tall reptilian warriors with exoskeletons that could deflect standard pulse rifles had been humanity's chief rival for control of the Orion Arm for nearly a decade. They were tactically brilliant, physically superior, and completely merciless, the perfect enemy for humanity to unite against, according to the propaganda vids. Hold up, Donna, are you picking up life signs over by that ridge? Faint biosignatures detected, species Draxx. Condition critical. Mack's training told him to call it in immediately. Standard procedure for enemy combatants found after battle: report, secure, and wait for specialized containment teams. But Mack had never been great at standard procedure. Let's check it out. Remind me to update your next psychological evaluation. Donna sighed. Beyond the ridge lay a single Draxx warrior, half buried under debris. Unlike the imposing figures from the training manuals, this one was immobile, its mottled green exoskeleton cracked in multiple places. The creature's 4 eyes tracked Mack's approach, the only indication it was alive. Human. The Draxx's translator device crackled with static. Finish it. Mack lowered his weapon. You want me to kill you? My neural stem is severed. I cannot move. My squadron has left me. It is our way. They left you to die because you're paralyzed. Mack knelt beside the alien, his medical scanner showing extensive damage to the equivalent of a spinal column. That's cold, even for you guys. Inefficient units are discarded. This is logical. The Draxx's mandibles clicked in what Mack guessed was their version of a shrug. I am Kzell, Battlecast, Squadron Rend Flesh. Charming squadron name. I'm Corporal Mack Reynolds, human. Squadron, please don't die today. He began clearing debris from around the alien. And where I come from, we don't leave soldiers behind, even enemy ones. Then humans are inefficient, Kzell stated. This explains much about your species' limited territorial holdings. Did you just insult humanity while lying helpless at my feet? That's either extremely brave, or extremely stupid. Mack laughed despite himself. Let's get you out of here. You misunderstand. I request termination, not rescue. Yeah, well, I've never been great at taking requests. Mack activated his comm link. Reynolds to base. I've found a survivor. Draxx, requesting medical evac. The response was immediate, and predictably outraged. Corporal Reynolds, this is Commander Patel. Return to your assigned patrol route immediately. Containment team will handle enemy combatants. With respect, Commander, this one needs immediate medical attention. Paralyzed but conscious. That is not your concern, Corporal. The Draxx themselves don't waste resources on their wounded. Why should we? Mack looked down at Kzell, whose multiple eyes were studying him with what might have been curiosity. Because we're not them, Mack replied, cutting the comm link. And that's exactly why we're going to win this war. Your commanding officer sounds displeased, Kzell observed as Mack began assessing how to move an alien that weighed roughly twice what he did. Commander Patel, she's always displeased. It's her default setting. I think they surgically remove the joy centers of your brain when you get promoted past captain. Mack circled the Draxx warrior, considering his options. Can you feel anything below where your whatever you call your neck is? The term is thoracic junction. And no, my nervous system has failed below the 3rd segment. Your effort is pointless. My kind will not accept damaged warriors back into the fleet. Mack activated his suit's enhanced strength mode. Then I guess we'll have to find you some new kind. The Draxx will hunt me as a deserter. You as a thief of military property. Military property, is that how you see yourself? Kzell's upper mandibles clicked in what might have been the alien equivalent of a sigh. A warrior exists to serve the hive command. When function ceases, existence should cease. That philosophy sucks eggs, just so you know. Mack positioned himself to lift the alien. My suit can handle your weight, but this is going to be awkward. Try not to backseat drive. I cannot drive from any seat. I am paralyzed. It's an expression, never mind. Mack's come crackled to life again. Reynolds, this is Commander Patel. Satellite imagery shows you are still with the enemy combatant. This is a direct order. Leave the Draxx and report back to base immediately. Sorry, Commander, you're breaking up. Mack made static noises with his mouth. Can't hear you. Must be solar interference. Reynolds, our comms are quantum linked. There is no solar interference. And I can hear you making fake static noises. Really bad interference, Mack continued, making louder noises. Something about promotion, Medal of Honor. Can't quite make it out. Going to rescue alien. Bye. He cut the communication link and activated his helmet's privacy mode. Your commanding officer will punish you for this defiance, Kzell noted. Probably. But I've got a perfect record of being punished for something or other every month since I enlisted. Wouldn't want to break my streak. Mack managed to hoist the alien onto his shoulders, his suit's servos whining in protest. Donna, what's the nearest safe route back to our lines? Define safe, the AI replied dryly. Less than 50% chance of death. Processing, the ravine to the east, provides cover from aerial surveillance, but extends your journey by approximately 3 kilometers. The direct northern route is shorter but leaves you exposed to potential Draxx patrols searching for survivors. My squadron will not be searching for me, Kzell interjected, but they may be hunting for human stragglers to eliminate. Charming bunch, your friends. Mack adjusted his grip and started toward the ravine. East it is. They are not my friends, they are my unit. The concept of friendship is a human inefficiency, says the guy who's currently getting a piggyback ride from his enemy. This is not a piggyback ride. This is strategic reassessment of resources under battlefield conditions. Mack snorted. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night. The Draxx do not sleep as humans do. We enter suspended tactical awareness for 20-minute intervals. You must be fun at parties. Parties would disrupt optimal combat readiness. As they made their way toward the ravine, Mack's comlink buzzed again. This time he answered it. Reynolds, came the voice of Lieutenant Garrison, Mack's direct superior yet the only officer who found his insubordination more amusing than infuriating. What the hell are you doing, son? Currently, giving a paralyzed alien lizard man a ride to safety while he critiques my entire species. There was a pause. You know what? I don't even want the details. Just be advised that Commander Patel has dispatched a security team to your location. She's calling it a rescue mission, but between you and me, I think she's hoping to court-martial you before the alien eats you. The Draxx do not eat humans, Kzell said loudly enough to be heard over the comm. Your muscle tissue contains insufficient nutrients and too many artificial preservatives. Was that Lieutenant Garrison began? Yep, that was him. Charming, isn't he? Mack adjusted his burden again. Look, Lieutenant, I know this is crazy, but I couldn't just leave him there. Another pause. You've got about 30 minutes before they reach your position. Make them count. The link went dead. Your Lieutenant Garrison exhibits unusual behavior for a superior officer, Kzell observed. Garrison understands something that most human and apparently all Draxx commanders forget. Soldiers aren't disposable parts in a war machine. We're people, or lizard, people, things in your case. And yet you dispose of electronics and vehicles when they malfunction. You're not a broken toaster, Kzell. No, a toaster can still perform its function. Mack shook his head as they descended into the ravine, the alien's considerable weight making each step a challenge despite his suit's assistance. One thing I don't get, Mack said, partly to distract himself from the strain. If the Draxx are all about efficiency and discarding the weak, how did you build an interstellar civilization? Cooperation and taking care of each other is how humans got where we are. The Draxx cooperate perfectly, Kzell replied. But we do not waste resources on those who cannot contribute. It is the strength of our society. Really, because from where I'm standing, or struggling to stand, it seems like a waste to throw away someone with your experience, just because you can't walk anymore. Your brain still works. A curious perspective. For the first time Kzell sounded thoughtful rather than dismissive. Perhaps this is why humans are so unpredictable in battle. You value unusual metrics. We value each other, Mack corrected, stepping carefully down a rocky slope. Now shut up and let me concentrate on not dropping you. Contrary to what you might think, I don't make a habit of cradling enemies in my arms. This is not cradling. This is tactical relocation. Whatever helps you sleep. Oh right, your 20-minute tactical awareness suspensions. My mistake. The ravine provided cover from aerial reconnaissance, but it came with its own set of problems. Nexus 4's ecosystem was in the middle of an evolutionary arms race, producing flora and fauna that seemed specifically designed to make humans regret ever setting foot on the planet. Don't touch those blue vines, Mack warned as he navigated a particularly narrow section of the ravine. They secrete an acid that can eat through combat armor in under a minute. I am incapable of touching anything, Kzell reminded him. The paralysis, remember? Right, sorry. Mack ducked under a low-hanging cluster of something that looked like glowing mushrooms. Must be weird, not being able to feel most of your body. It is inefficient, Kzell replied after a moment. But my neural pathways above the injury still function. I can observe, process, calculate. Always calculating, huh? Don't you ever just, I don't know, enjoy the sunset, appreciate a good meal? Have you Draxx ever heard of a vacation? These concepts exist in our culture, but they are viewed as training exercises. The sunset provides data on atmospheric conditions. A meal is fuel and nothing more. Vacation translates roughly to alternative combat scenario simulation. That's the saddest thing I've heard all day, and I've been trudging through a war zone. Mack's suit sensors beeped a warning. Movement ahead. Donna, what are we looking at? Local predator species. Nexus stalker. 2 meters in length. Carnivorous. Primarily nocturnal but known to hunt after battles when blood scent is strong. Great. Just perfect. Mack carefully set Kzell down behind a large rock. Stay here. I have no choice in the matter, Kzell observed dryly. Mack readied his rifle and peered around the boulder. The Nexus stalker resembled a cross between an earth crocodile and a centipede, with multiple segmented legs and a jaw that could probably snap a human femur without much effort. It was currently sniffing the ground, following their trail. I need to take this thing out quietly, Mack whispered. Any loud noises could attract attention from patrols. Your strategy is flawed, Kzell said. The Nexus stalker has poor eyesight but excellent hearing. It has already detected us and is calculating the best approach vector. And you're just telling me this now? You did not ask. The creature suddenly charged, moving with surprising speed for something with so many legs. Mack fired a silenced shot, hitting it in the front segment. The stalker barely slowed. Aim for the third body segment from the head, Kzell instructed. That is where the primary neural cluster is located. Mack adjusted his aim and fired again. This time the creature collapsed mid-charge, its many legs twitching before it went still. How did you know that? Mack asked, checking to make sure the stalker was actually dead. The Draxx conducted extensive biological surveys of this planet before the conflict began. We catalog weaknesses in all potential threats. That's actually quite useful. Mack hoisted Kzell back onto his shoulders. Any other deadly creatures I should know about? At least 17 within this ecosystem, though only 4 are likely to be encountered in this terrain. Fantastic. Care to share the vital weak points of those 4? Would that not be providing tactical information to the enemy? Mack sighed. I'm literally carrying you to safety. I think we're past the enemy stage and into some weird reluctant allies territory. An interesting perspective. Very well. The flying parasites that humans call skin burrowers have a vulnerable respiratory center located. Wait, skin burrowers? Those are real? I thought that was just a story veterans tell to scare new recruits. They are quite real. And approaching from the north, Mack turned to see a swarm of what looked like iridescent dragonflies, each about the size of his hand. Donna, options. Running is inadvisable while carrying the Draxx, the AI replied. The swarm is attracted to movement and carbon dioxide. Recommendation. Temporary shelter. Mack spotted a small cave in the ravine wall. There. Let's hope it's not something's home. He ducked inside just as the swarm reached their position. The cave was shallow but deep enough to provide protection. Mack set Kzell down against the wall and positioned himself at the entrance, rifle ready. These creatures are not predators in the traditional sense, Kzell explained. They inject larvae into living hosts. The larvae consume the host from within over a period of approximately 3 days. That's disgusting. It is merely their reproductive strategy. No more disgusting than human methods. Trust me, it's way worse. Mack watched as the swarm circled outside. How long will they stay? Until they find a suitable host or expend their limited energy reserves. Approximately 20 minutes. Mack settled in to wait, keeping his rifle trained on the cave entrance. So, 20 minutes of quality time. Tell me about the Draxx. Your actual history, not the propaganda they feed us. Why do you wish to know? Because I'm curious. Because I'm sitting in a cave with a Draxx warrior, which is something no human has done before and lived to tell about it. Because maybe if we understood each other better, we wouldn't be trying to kill each other across 3-star systems. Kzell was silent for a moment. The Draxx evolved on a world with limited resources. Cooperation within the group was necessary, but so was efficiency. Those who could not contribute were a threat to group survival. It was not cruelty but necessity. And now, you've got starships and terraforming technology. You're not exactly scraping by anymore. Cultural evolution moves slower than technological advancement. The values that ensured our survival remain central to our identity, even when they don't make sense anymore. Do all human customs make sense? I have observed your species maintains many irrational practices for the sake of tradition. Mack laughed. Fair point, but we're working on it. Slowly. Outside, the swarm began to disperse, individual insects flying off in different directions as they searched for easier prey. They're leaving, Mack observed. Guess we're not worth the trouble. Or perhaps they sense you are already hosting a different kind of parasite. Was that? Did you just make a joke? The Draxx do not joke. I was merely observing that your military command structure appears to feed off your autonomy. Huh. Paralyzed alien, with a philosophy degree. This day just keeps getting weirder. Mack checked that the coast was clear before lifting Kzell again. For what it's worth, I think both our species have some evolving to do. Perhaps. Though I note that it is your irrational compassion, not Draxx efficiency, that has ensured my continued existence today. Was that a thank you? It was an observation. I'll take it. Mack adjusted his grip and continued through the ravine. Let's get moving. We've still got a long way to go, and I'm pretty sure both our species want us dead at this point. As they emerged from the cave, a distant explosion echoed across the battlefield. Mack's comm unit crackled to life. Reynolds. Come in, Reynolds. It was Lieutenant Garrison, his voice tense. I'm here, Lieutenant. What's happening? Change of plans. The Draxx have launched a counter-offensive. They're pushing back hard, and they're between you and our lines. You need to find cover and lay low until we can push them back. Mack looked down at Kzell. Any insights on this counter-offensive? Standard Draxx doctrine. After a tactical withdrawal, we often launch a surprise reverse thrust to catch human forces in disarray. And you didn't think to mention this earlier. You did not ask. And until recently, I was still categorizing you as the enemy. And now? Kzell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Now I am uncertain. This is an unfamiliar sensation. Welcome to the club, Mack muttered, scanning the horizon where plumes of smoke were rising. Uncertainty is pretty much the human condition. Your species has a saying, Kzell remarked as Mack crouched behind a rocky outcropping surveying the battlefield ahead. Something about frying pans and fires. Out of the frying pan into the fire, Mack confirmed. Pretty much sums up our situation. The Draxx counter-offensive had transformed the relatively clear path to human lines into an active combat zone. Plasma bolts and railgun rounds crisscrossed the plains ahead, punctuated by the occasional explosion of heavier ordnance. Donna, tactical assessment, Mack whispered. Draxx forces have established a defensive line approximately 1.2 kilometers north of your position. Human forces are regrouping 3 kilometers beyond that. Probability of crossing undetected 12.3%. Those are not encouraging odds, Kzell observed. I've had worse. When? I'm sure I have. I just can't think of specifics right now. Mack adjusted his grip on the alien. Any chance your people might let us pass if they see you? They would terminate me as a liability and you as an enemy combatant. I told you, damaged units are discarded. Right. Forgot about your charming cultural practices. Mack activated his helmet's enhanced optics, scanning for a path through the chaos. We need to find another way around. A sudden movement to their right caught Mack's attention. He ducked lower, pulling Kzell down with him. Draxx patrol, he whispered. 3 of them, moving this way. Donna, mute external speakers. The AI complied, and Mack's suit went silent to outside listeners. The patrol consisted of 3 Draxx warriors, each carrying what humans called shredders, weapons that fired superheated metal fragments that could turn a person into something resembling ground beef in seconds. They're searching for survivors, Kzell said quietly. Standard sweep pattern. Can they detect us here? Their sensory equipment is calibrated for human biosignatures. My presence may confuse their readings. The patrol moved methodically, sweeping handheld sensors across the terrain. The leader, distinguished by red markings on his exoskeleton, paused and pointed in their direction. I think they've spotted us, Mack whispered. No, they are discussing the recent battle. The leader is Verac, squadron commander of Claw Strike Unit. He was my superior. Mack could just make out the alien conversation, his translator rendering it into slightly stilted English. Sector clear of viable human targets, one of the warriors reported. What of Squadron Rend Flesh? Verac asked. Any signs of survivors? Negative. 2 confirmed terminations. 1 unrecovered unit. The unrecovered unit is inoperative. Kzell was seen taking critical damage to the neural stem. We proceed without him. Acknowledged. Hive Command will be pleased with our efficiency. Mack felt Kzell stiffen slightly against him. Friends of yours. As I told you, we do not have friends. Draxx was my commander for 7 stellar cycles. We fought together in the Proxima campaign, and the Sirius incursion, and he's writing you off like a broken appliance. It is our way. Yeah, well, your way sucks. The patrol moved on, continuing their sweep in a different direction. Mack waited until they were out of sight before relaxing slightly. They will establish a perimeter before nightfall, Kzell said. We must move quickly if we are to find a way through. How do you know they won't double back? Because I know Draxx tactics. I helped develop many of them. There was a hint of something in Kzell's voice. Not quite pride, but something close to it. They will continue in a spiral pattern, assuming any survivors would move toward the center of the battlefield where debris provides cover, so we go the opposite way. Precisely. Skirt the edge of the combat zone, then cut north when we reach the eastern perimeter. Mack nodded and carefully maneuvered them out of their hiding spot. For someone who's supposedly just a broken part, you're pretty valuable right now. Tactical knowledge is not the same as combat functionality. Tell that to every general who's ever lived. Most of them couldn't win a fistfight with a determined toddler, but they still run the show. They moved cautiously along the edge of the battlefield, taking advantage of the gathering dusk. Mack's suit was equipped with basic stealth capabilities. Nothing that would fool dedicated sensors, but enough to avoid casual detection. May I ask you something, Mack Reynolds? Kzell said, after they had traveled in silence for some time. Sure, not like I can stop you. Why did you disobey your commander to help me? The probability of success was low. The risk to your future advancement was high. There was no logical benefit to your actions. Mack carefully stepped over a piece of twisted metal. I don't know. Seemed like the right thing to do. That is not an explanation. Sure it is. Sometimes humans just do things because they feel right, not because they make sense on paper. This is inefficient. Probably. But it's also what makes us human. Mack paused for a moment. Look, if I'd left you there, I would have completed my mission faster, probably would have gotten a commendation instead of a court-martial, but I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. Because of your moral code. Because you were a person who needed help. Enemy or not. Kzell was silent for a long moment. I do not understand this, but I appreciate it. That is the correct term. Yes. Yeah, that's close enough. A sudden explosion lit up the darkening sky to their north. Mack dropped to a crouch, seeking cover behind a fallen tree. That was not Draxx weaponry, Kzell observed, nor human. Donna, what are we looking at? Mack asked. Analyzing. Unknown energy signature, not consistent with either Draxx or human military technology. There's a third player on the field. Mack's day was getting better and better. The Draxx, Kzell said grimly. A scavenger species. They follow conflicts, picking over battlefields for technology and resources. Like space vultures, vultures serve an ecological purpose. The Draxx are merely opportunists. Another explosion, closer this time. Mack caught a glimpse of sleek, dart-like ships skimming low over the battlefield. They're attacking both sides, he realized. Softening up whatever resistance is left so they can scavenge in peace. Their tactics are predictable. They will sweep from east to west, herding survivors into a kill zone. So we need to go south, west. They will not expect targets to move into their path, rather than away from it. Mack nodded. Risky, but it might work. Donna, can you patch me through to Lieutenant Garrison? Negative. Communications are being jammed across all frequencies. Perfect. Just perfect. The Draxx are technologically advanced, but tactically simplistic, Kzell continued. They rely on superior equipment rather than strategy. Unlike the Draxx, who are all about the strategy. Precisely. And unlike humans, who are all about the... What exactly would you say is our strength? Kzell seemed to consider this. Adaptability. And an irrational stubbornness that borders on suicidal but occasionally produces results. I'll take that as a compliment. More explosions lit up the sky, and Mack could see Draxx forces regrouping to face the new threat. The human lines were doing the same, both sides momentarily forgetting their conflict in the face of a common enemy. We need to move now, Kzell said urgently. While they are distracted. Right. Mack secured his grip on the alien, and started moving westward, directly toward the approaching Draxx ships. This is absolutely crazy, you know that. Yes. But as you said, sometimes the illogical choice is the correct one. Now you're getting it. They moved as quickly as Mack's burdened suit would allow, racing the approaching line of wrecked ships. The aliens hadn't spotted them yet, focused as they were on the larger forces ahead. "We're going to make it," Mack said, more to convince himself than Kzell. That's when the searchlight found them. The searchlight pinned them like insects on display. Mack's first instinct was to run, but with Kzell's weight on his shoulders, that wasn't an option. His second instinct was to fight, but against a Vrax gunship with only a standard-issue rifle, that was suicide. "Any brilliant tactical insights?" Mack asked, already calculating how long it would take to reach the nearest cover. "Yes. Do not move." "What?" "Do not move." The Vrax visual systems are motion-based. They often overlook stationary objects. Mack froze, every muscle tensed. The searchlight continued to sweep over them, but the expected weapons fire didn't come. "Is it working?" he whispered. "Unclear. The pilot may be assessing whether we are worth the ammunition." "Gee, that's comforting." The light lingered for what felt like an eternity before finally moving on, continuing its sweep across the battlefield. "That was either brilliant or incredibly lucky," Mack said, releasing the breath he'd been holding. "Often the difference is merely a matter of perspective," Kzell replied. "Now move, quickly." Mack didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted for the nearest cover, a collapsed section of what had once been a defensive wall. Once there, he set Kzell down and massaged his shoulders. "You know, for someone who claims to be just a broken part, you're pretty handy in a crisis. My neural pathways above the injury are fully functional. My mind remains a weapon, even if my body does not. See that right there? That's why the Draxx policy of discarding injured warriors is so stupid. You've got more tactical knowledge in your head than most of my commanding officers combined." Kzell was silent for a moment. "It is not a matter I have considered before. The Draxx way has always been absolute. Maybe it's time for an update." Before Kzell could respond, Mack's comm crackled to life. "Reynolds, Reynolds, do you copy?" It was Lieutenant Garrison, his voice barely audible through the static. "Lieutenant, I'm here. What's the situation?" "Bad and getting worse. The Vrax have cut off our retreat path. We're pinned down at coordinates 478203. Draxx forces are in a similar situation to our east." "Any orders, sir?" "Yeah. Stay alive. Command is scrambling reinforcements, but they're at least 3 hours out. We're on our own until then." "Understood." Reynolds out. Mack turned to Kzell. "Looks like both our sides are in trouble. The Vrax use this tactic frequently. Divide and isolate, then eliminate each group individually. So what's the counter-strategy?" Kzell's eyes narrowed in what Mack had learned was a thoughtful expression. "The Draxx have developed several effective countermeasures against Vrax technology. Their ships rely on a centralized control system. Disrupt that, and their coordination fails." "Great. And how exactly do we disrupt it?" "Their command ship will be positioned high above the battlefield, outside the range of conventional weapons. It transmits control signals to the attack vessels. So we need to take out the command ship." "With what?" "Harsh language. There is a Draxx anti-orbital cannon positioned approximately 600 meters east of our current location. It was deployed for the main assault, but was abandoned when the counter-offensive began." Mack's eyes widened. "And you know how to operate it?" "I helped design it." "You're just full of surprises, aren't you?" Mack checked his weapon and surveyed the terrain. 600 meters east puts us right in the middle of Draxx territory." "Correct. But their forces are currently engaged with the Vrax. The cannon will be minimally guarded, if at all." "This is crazy," Mack muttered. "But crazy seems to be working for us so far. Let's do it." He hoisted Kzell back onto his shoulders and set off, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. The battlefield had transformed into a three-way conflict, with human and Draxx forces fighting both each other and the Vrax. The chaos provided cover for their movement, but also made the terrain treacherous. "Once we reach the cannon," Kzell explained as they moved, "I will need to access its control systems. You will need to physically aim it. I've never operated alien weapons before. The principles are similar to human artillery. The difficulty will be in calculating the correct trajectory, which I'm guessing you can do." "Of course. It is basic orbital mechanics." After navigating through the debris-strewn battlefield, they finally spotted the cannon, a massive insect-like structure with a long barrel pointed skyward. True to Kzell's prediction, it was unguarded, the Draxx forces having been pulled away to deal with the Vrax attack. "Set me down at the control panel," Kzell instructed. Mack carefully positioned the alien where he could reach the strange console. Kzell's upper limbs were still functional, and his four-fingered hands moved with practiced precision across the alien interface. "The targeting system is online," Kzell reported, "but the power core is in standby mode. It must be manually activated. Where? The access panel at the base of the barrel. Mack sprinted to the location and found a complex array of glowing crystals and pulsing tubes. Okay, now what? The red crystal must be rotated clockwise until it aligns with the blue conduit. Any chance this thing will explode if I do it wrong? A significant chance. Yes. Wonderful. Mack carefully manipulated the crystal, wincing as it heated up under his touch. Is this supposed to be burning my fingers? The crystal absorbs thermal energy from organic matter. It is functioning correctly. You guys really need to work on your user interfaces. With a final twist, the crystal locked into place. The entire cannon hummed to life, vibrating with barely contained energy. Power core activated. Kzell called out. Return to the control panel. I will need you to physically aim the cannon while I calculate the targeting solution. Mack hurried back just as Kzell finished inputting a series of commands. The Draxx command ship is in geosynchronous orbit directly above the battlefield. We will have only one shot before they detect our activation and take evasive action. No pressure or anything. Mack grabbed the manual controls, two joystick-like apparatuses that controlled the cannon's elevation and azimuth. Ready when you are. Elevation 87.3 degrees, azimuth 42.1 degrees. Mack adjusted the controls, feeling the massive weapon shift beneath him. Got it. Firing solution calculated. On my mark, press the primary ignition control, which is the large purple button to your left. Right. Mack positioned his hand over the button, wondering briefly if he had finally lost his mind. Here he was, a human soldier, operating an alien weapon under the direction of an enemy combatant, to fire at a third alien species altogether. The absurdity of it all almost made him laugh. Mark, Kzell shouted. Mack slammed his hand down on the button. The cannon roared to life, a blinding beam of energy erupting from its barrel and streaking into the sky. The recoil nearly knocked him off his feet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, high above, a flash of light bloomed in the darkness, a distant explosion that briefly outshone the stars. Direct hit, Kzell reported, his voice containing something that might have been satisfaction. The command ship's control systems have been neutralized. As if on cue, the Draxx attack ships suddenly broke formation, their coordinated assault dissolving into chaos. Some began to retreat, while others flew in erratic patterns, clearly disoriented. It worked, Mack exclaimed. We actually did it. Indeed, the Draxx fleet will require approximately 17 minutes to re-establish manual control of their vessels. By then, they will have lost their tactical advantage. Mack was about to respond when a plasma bolt struck the ground nearby, showering them with debris. He whirled to see a squad of Draxx warriors approaching, weapons raised. Looks like your friends noticed us, Mack said grimly, raising his own rifle. They are not my friends, Kzell replied, and they are not firing to kill. Sure enough, the squad had stopped advancing and lowered their weapons slightly. The leader stepped forward, and Mack recognized the red markings of Commander Draxx. Kzell of Squadron Rendflesh, Draxx called out. You were reported as non-functional. My neural stem is severed, Kzell replied. I cannot walk or fight, but as you can see, I remain capable of tactical contribution. Draxx's eyes shifted to Mack, then back to Kzell. You directed the human to fire the cannon, yes, and destroyed the Draxx command ship, yes. Draxx seemed to consider this information. This is unexpected. The Draxx doctrine does not account for such a scenario. Perhaps, Kzell suggested, the doctrine requires revision. Mack kept his rifle ready, but didn't raise it. This was Kzell's moment, not his. Draxx approached, studying Kzell, with what might have been curiosity. You chose to continue functioning, despite your damage. Why? I did not choose. The human did not give me a choice. Mack snorted. Don't put this on me, lizard boy. You could have told me to shoot you any time. Kzell's mandibles clicked in what Mack now recognized as amusement. Perhaps I have learned something about human inefficiency. Sometimes, the illogical choice yields unexpected results. Draxx looked between them, clearly struggling to comprehend their interaction. The human carried you here, across the battlefield, yes. Why would a human do this for a Draxx? Because, Mack interjected, where I come from, we don't leave soldiers behind. Even the scaly, grumpy ones who keep insulting our species. Draxx translators seem to struggle with this concept. This is not efficient. No, Kzell agreed, but it is effective. The distant sound of approaching engines drew their attention. Human dropships were descending on one side of the battlefield, while Draxx reinforcements were arriving on the other. Well, Mack said, looks like the cavalry's here, for both of us. Draxx made a gesture to his squad, who lowered their weapons completely. You have aided the Draxx today, human. This will be reported. Gee, thanks. And you, Kzell? Verac hesitated. Your situation requires reconsideration. Indeed, Kzell replied. Perhaps we both have much to reconsider. 3 days later, Mack found himself in the uncomfortable position of being simultaneously a hero and a disciplinary problem. The debriefing room on the human command ship, Relentless, felt more like a courtroom, with Commander Patel at the head of the table, looking like she'd swallowed something particularly unpleasant. Let me get this straight, Corporal Reynolds, she said, pinching the bridge of her nose. You disobeyed direct orders, carried an enemy combatant across an active battlefield, operated alien weaponry without authorization, and potentially initiated diplomatic contact with the Draxx, all in the span of roughly 16 hours. Yes, ma'am, it was a busy day. Lieutenant Garrison, seated to Mack's right, failed to completely suppress a snort of laughter, which he quickly disguised as a cough. And you believe these actions were justified because? Patel prompted. Because they worked, ma'am. Mack straightened in his chair. The Vracs were driven off. Both human and Draxx casualties were significantly reduced, and we now have a potential opening for communication with the Draxx that didn't exist before. That's a matter for High Command to decide, not a corporal in the field, Patel countered. With respect, Commander, Lieutenant Garrison interjected. High Command has already decided. They've appointed Reynolds as liaison to the Draxx medical exchange program. Patel's eyes widened. They what? Orders came through this morning. Garrison slid a datapad across the table. Apparently, the Draxx have requested human medical expertise in developing rehabilitation technologies for injured warriors. They've specifically asked for Corporal Reynolds to serve as the program coordinator. This is highly irregular, Patel muttered, scanning the document. So was carrying a paralyzed alien across a battlefield while being shot at from 3 different directions, Mack pointed out. But here we are. Patel fixed him with a glare that could have melted steel. You're still facing disciplinary action for insubordination, Corporal. Yes, ma'am, I expected nothing less. Dismissed, both of you. As they left the debriefing room, Garrison clapped Mack on the shoulder. You know, in all my years of service, I've never seen anyone get promoted and court-martialed in the same week. I like to keep things interesting, sir. That you do, Reynolds. That you do. Garrison paused outside the medical bay. He's in there. They finished the neural interface installation this morning. Mack nodded. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Just try not to start another interstellar incident before lunch. Mack entered the medical bay to find Kzell propped up on a specialized bed, his immobile lower body connected to a complex array of machinery. Human and Draxx medical staff moved around him, making adjustments and taking readings. Well, look at you, Mack said, approaching the bed. The galaxy's first cyborg Draxx. How's it feel? The neural interface is adequate, Kzell replied, though your human engineers have a strange obsession with ergonomics. We like our deadly weapons to be comfortable. Call us crazy. I frequently do. Mack smiled. So the word is you're heading back to Draxx space. As a tactical advisor, yes. The Hive Command has determined that my neural capacity remains valuable, despite my physical limitations. Kzell's mandibles clicked in what Mack now recognized as the Draxx equivalent of a thoughtful expression. It seems that efficiency can be redefined. Progress, one stubborn lizard at a time. And you, Mack Reynolds, I hear you are to be the human representative to the medical exchange program. Yeah, apparently carrying your scaly behind across a battlefield qualifies me as a diplomatic expert. Mack shrugged. Who knew? You demonstrated qualities that the Draxx find intriguing. My good looks and charm. Your irrational commitment to preserving life even at great personal risk. It is not a trait we have observed in other species. Ah, that. Mack leaned against the bed. Well, turns out sometimes the most human thing you can do is help someone who isn't human. A curious philosophy. Says the guy who's now technically a cyborg because of it. Kzell's eyes blinked in sequence. I have been considering our time together. Your actions were inefficient, illogical, and contrary to your military doctrine. Thanks. And yet they produced results that benefited both our species. This suggests a flaw in our understanding of efficiency. Or maybe some things are worth doing even if they don't make sense on paper. Perhaps. Kzell extended an upper limb, an unmistakable gesture. The Draxx do not typically engage in physical contact as a social ritual. Mack took the offered hand, careful of the sharp edges of Kzell's exoskeleton, making an exception. I am experimenting with human customs. Well, don't get too comfortable with them. I'd hate to see you go native. That would be highly improbable. Kzell released Mack's hand, though I must admit your species has shown unexpected resilience. High praise from a Draxx. It is merely an observation. I'll take it. Mack straightened up. They're shipping me out to the border station tomorrow. Guess this is goodbye. The Draxx do not have a concept of goodbye. We simply acknowledge the termination of an interaction. That's depressing, but effective. Mack laughed. Some things never change. Take care of yourself, Kzell of Squadron Rend Flesh. Try not to start a revolution while I'm gone. I make no promises. Mack Reynolds of Squadron, please don't die today. As Mack turned to leave, Kzell called after him. Mack Reynolds, yeah, the human concept of friendship remains inefficient and illogical, but I find I am not opposed to it. Mack grinned. Coming from you, that's practically a declaration of love. Do not push your luck, human. Wouldn't dream of it, lizard boy. Outside the medical bay, Mack paused to look through the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the war was still raging. Humans and Draxx continued to fight across a dozen worlds, each believing their way was the right one. But something had changed. A single act of compassion had created a small crack in the rigid Draxx doctrine. A paralyzed warrior had proven that value wasn't measured solely by physical capability, and one stubborn human soldier had shown that sometimes, the most illogical choice was exactly the right one. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was a start, and as Mack had learned, sometimes all you needed was a stubborn refusal to leave someone behind, even if that someone was a paralyzed alien warrior who thought your entire species was inefficient. Sometimes, humanity's greatest strength was simply being human.